All right, today, guys, we're going to be replacing the radio in this 2004 Chevy Cavalier. Just want to show you the procedure to get the dash off and stuff first. But the primary reason I'm doing this video is to show you, after how you replace the radio, how you get it out of an unlocked state. So let's go ahead and get started on how we have to get it off. So in order to get it off, there's a couple of things you got to do before we can pull this panel off. We're going to start up here. We're going to remove a screw to get this trim piece off. It's just a Phillips screw. And once we pull this screw off, then we should be able to remove this trim piece. Now, on these Cavaliers in particular, what I've seen over the years, and Sunfires too, the plastic gets really, really damaged from the sun. You can see up here there's a lot of cracking, and so a lot of this stuff is going to be on the fragile side. So you definitely want to be using the right tools for this, and you definitely want to go kind of slow and methodical so you don't damage anything. Once you get that cover off for the defroster, there's a couple of T15 bolts here, Torx bolts, and we're going to remove those next. One on each side. So there's this guy. And there's one on the left. I've tried to park this guy in the shade today because it's super hot for this job. These the rest of the way out myself in a minute, but you get the idea. I'm going to remove these two here. And then on the side out here, there's a panel that we're going to remove. Access panel. That just comes off. And that's going to give us access to this Torx screw here. And then we're going to do the same thing on the driver's side with respect to taking off this access panel and removing the Torx screw that you find there. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm not necessarily going to show you that side. I'll show it to you after I'm done, but I'm going to go over. I'm going to remove that panel on the driver's side, take the screw off over there, finish taking the two that I loosened up over here, and then we'll come back because we're going to proceed into the glove box next. Okay, this is just a view from the driver's side. So when you come in here, you're going to notice there's a screw here and a screw here. It's this one on the edge that you want to take off because we're trying to get where we can lift this panel up. So I've got this guy out. Now we're going to proceed into the glove box area. Now in the glove box, there's a couple of screws that we're going to remove that are right here and here. So there's one directly under this AC vent, and there's one right next to it to the left. And again, we can use our T15 socket to get these out. And then before I forget, after I get these guys out, I didn't show you when I finally removed those ones on the upper dash. When they come off the upper dash, the one on the right is the longer one. The one on the left is the shorter one. Again, these were the ones that came from the upper defroster duct on the dash. All right, so this guy's off, and now we're going to take this guy off. Now you don't have to use a T15 here. You know, you could throw a socket on these. They are hex-headed screws. All right, now with that out of the way, there's a couple of bolts that are right here. 8mm, 1 and 2. And these are the next two we're going to want to take off. And I thought I had the right size socket on here, but I didn't. So let me go change my socket and we'll come back. All right, guys, I misread that. It's a 7mm socket. So I just had to change from the one I had to a 7. Now, I'm not going to take these all the way out because I'm filming and I can't see them that well with the camera in front of them. And I don't want them to fall behind here. So I'm just going to loosen them up. And then I'm going to stop the camera. I'm going to get in here and take them out by hand. I've got myself a little magnet in case I do make a mistake and drop them down there so I can fish them out. All right. that's the deal here. We're going to take these two guys off. So all right, guys, I've got this out. I'm just kind of showing you, basically what I do is I loosen up my hand, and then as I take it off my hand, I use a remote magnet to hold on to it just to make sure it doesn't fall back behind the dash. All right, so with that all taken care of, the next step we're going to have to do is to remove this top piece. And I've got my prying tool that I'm going to use to do that. So it's basically just some little latches that you prise up. You can see them right here, these little studs, and they go into these little holes. Again, we just want to go nice and slow because of how everything's kind of cracked from the plastic over the years. This side loose over here, and then whoops, I did forget one screw on the far left above the glove box entry. So whenever you're doing something like this and something feels like it's hard or stuck, I never force it. I always just kind of go slow, and if it feels like I'm getting some resistance, it probably means like what I just saw there, that I forgot something. Okay, so got almost all of these out. There we go, last one. So we're going to take this whole dash piece off, and we're going to set it aside out of the vehicle. And then with this out of the way, we're finally almost in a position where we can get at what we need to get at here, which is this front piece. Now this guy's held in by some additional screws. You can see one of them right here. And again, it's the same kind of T15 deal. So I'm going to remove this guy. And then we just have to go around and see which other ones are like that we have to remove. There's going to be some more clips. And there's another one right up here on top. Another thing I'd tell you while you're in here, I didn't disconnect the battery because you don't normally need to bother with it on this procedure, but make sure you stay away from this passenger side airbag. Don't leave any tools on it. Don't lay anything on it that might trigger it. Just a good best practice. All right, so now I'm going to come over on the other side and see if we have another screw that's holding this piece on. And yes, we do, right here in the corner. In the far corner, there's one more. Okay, and with that guy out of the way, we should be able to remove this trim piece and get access. Yep. Okay, so now actually comes the hard part. You're going to have to reach behind here, and I'm not going to be able to show this very easily. I'm going to have to reach behind here and disconnect the headlight dimmer switch and the cigarette. So let me pause for a second and get those disconnected. All right, guys, I got the dimmer switch off here. The last thing left is this cigarette lighter. I've popped it out of the bottom clips here and here for this piece. And then with this guy, when you got it in this position, there's a little knob on top or a little lever. You just give it a squeeze. Right, you'll feel it like right there, right? This guy right here. And he comes out. And with that out of the way, you can remove this. And the way I got the dimmer switch to release, if you look at the other side here, you can see this little clip here. There's a notch on this card edge connector. This guy right here. And all you do is you just need to lift that notch up very carefully so you don't break it, so that you can clear the little tab here that's retaining it. And this guy will come right unplugged here, because it's just like literally like an old-fashioned card edge connector. I don't know if you can still see this, but that's what the deal is here. All right, so this guy we're also going to set aside away from the vehicle. And again, be super careful. As I was taking this off, I noticed that it's got the beginning of a little crack starting right there, and I managed to not break it or cause it to get any worse. So it's just part of what's going on with these Cavaliers when they get this old. All right, so all we have left to get the radio out is we've got 2 screws here and 1 screw here. So let me set this dash panel aside and we'll pull the radio. All right, let's take this set of screws off so we can finally get this radio out. Another thing I didn't mention on the previous piece is when you're getting ready to remove this, this dash piece, if you've got a tilt wheel, go ahead and tilt it all the way down. Makes it a little bit easier to get the clearance and put less stress on that plastic. All right, so this guy almost out here. And we got this guy. And this is the factory original radio from 2004. This is it's like the mid-range radio. Okay, this guy comes off, and then the owner of this vehicle actually has a third-party attachment here in the back. And what that attachment does, let me just get this stuff unplugged first. You just kind of give these guys a squeeze, just like you see here. And they come off. And then the antenna just pulls straight off like that. That's like the same kind of connector since like the 1940s, no change at all. All right, and so what we have here is the owner has gotten a device that plugs into the back of the radio that is used to allow you to have an auxiliary input. And we're going to have to remove this because you can't have anything like this plugged in while you're trying to unlock the radio using we're going to be using a Tech2 GM tool today. This thing's wedged in there pretty good. I have to figure out how I can get in there and get it out. But we're going to unhook this so that we just go back to the original harness, which it looks like this guy is like spliced in here. I thought it was just a plug-in kind of thing. Well, we may have to just leave it unplugged like this and just leave it be to get it hooked up. I'll have to kind of take a look at what this is because this isn't a factory deal here. All right, so let's take a look at this radio alongside the new radio and we'll talk about what we're going to do. All right, guys, before we put this new radio in, I want to show you some information about how to pick the right upgrade radio. So I'm going to go to something called the GM Heritage Center, and I'm going to look specifically I'm on Google here, right? This is all you need to do here for Cavaliers. And what the GM Heritage Center is for car collectors and people restoring classic cars or older cars. They archive information. This is a 2004 Cavalier, and 2003, 4, and 5 are the same model series, actually the last run of the Cavalier. So I'm going to pull up the 2005 Cavalier package. And what this package is all kinds of information about the Cavalier, and what we're particularly interested in is the radio options. And what we need to do here in order to be able to unlock this stuff using a GM Tech2, we have to use a radio that was originally available at the time the product, well, the vehicle as the product was in production. So what we're looking for here is where the RPO codes are. Here it is, the RPO code list. RPO stands for Regular Production Option, and these are the codes that were used by the dealer to place an order for the vehicle, either one that they ordered themselves and you bought off the lot, or that they ordered for you. So I'm going to come down here, and I also should see in the introduction section a little bit about information about the radio itself. Here we go, audio file options. So the 05 was the last year of this series, and this one would be compatible. So they tell us that there's 3 radios that were offered: a plain Jane AM/FM, an AM/FM that has a CD player, and it's, I don't actually say there, but I know, and then there's this AM/FM CD with an MP3 player. So those are the 3 tiers. So if we take a look at the actual, we don't count XM radio, that would be something you'd see called a digital radio receiver or something of that nature. We're just looking at standard radio. We're going to go down to page 16 here of the RPO list. Just give me a moment here to find it. Just scrolling really slow. Here we go. This is the RPO list. Right? These are all the options on the vehicle, all kinds of stuff. We are interested in the radios, which are going to start around letter U. Here we go. Okay, so there's actually a mistake on this. So UL5 is actually radio delete. That means the person ordered the car and there's no radio. Something you might see on a fleet vehicle or a government vehicle. Then we see UM7, which is a standard AM/FM stereo, and UN0, which is AM/FM stereo with a CD. We see a few speaker options, a type of, and this is just the radio antenna that sits up on the back quarter panel. Here we see US8. This is the top radio, AM/FM stereo, CD, and MP3 capable. And so there's US8, UN0, and UM7 are the 3 types of radios. Now you'll see sometimes some other radios listed. You'll notice they'll end up having the same description. This U1C is actually the same description as UN0, so it doesn't count as a separate radio. Digital audio, this is our XM radio receiver, if the vehicle had that. So now we've got what we need. So why do we want these codes? Well, we've got to find part numbers to order the radios. So I like to use GM Parts Giant for this kind of stuff, but now knowing the options, I can see the different radio part numbers. So here's a US8 radio, 103-48717. This was the top of the line radio, right? So if we go back to our RPOs, we know US8 was our top of the line MP3 player radio. And then if we want to see where our UN7 and UM7 radios are, here is the here's the UM7. Here's UN0, and I'm looking at UN0 here. I'm sorry, I read it wrong. UN0. That's what I was looking at. So we've mapped all 3 RPOs, UN0, UM7, and US8 to part numbers. So now if we take a look at the radio that came out of the vehicle, we can see that this is a part number 103-35223. Now sometimes you'll find these numbers don't match up to what's over here. So I know that this is the mid-level radio because it has a CD player, and they're showing a 103-46316. This is a superseded number. This is the original number that went into the radio, was put in there back in April of 2004 when it was manufactured by Delco Electronics. And so this radio number has just been superseded, rather. You now know that this number and this number are compatible with this vehicle. There may even been numbers in between. The people that sell these radios, if you buy them from somebody that does it as a business, they'll have a lot of the familiarity on the right radio for you. But the important thing is to get the one that matches. Let's take a look at the radio I picked to do the upgrade. This is the top-end MP3 type radio. And this one has a part number of 103-48717, and that's exactly what we see on the screen. So in the case of the top-line radio, this one has never changed. The manufacturing date on this is July 19th of 2004. So it could have either been a late production 04 radio or an early production 2005 radio. But the point is, it's a supported radio. And again, so why do we go through this? These are the only radios you can put in this vehicle. If you pick a radio from a Buick, if you pick a radio from a Cadillac, even if it fits, you will not be able to unlock it with a Tech2. Because the Tech2 is only going to have the programming to deal with the radios that came with the vehicle brand new. The only way you'll luck out is when you have a situation like this, where there's more than one part number used for the same damn radio. Now, GM might have changed that part number because maybe they changed some kind of chips inside of it, maybe they changed the bracket, maybe they changed something with the supplier of the faceplate. Something triggered a different number for Delco Electronics to change a new number, but it ends up being the same, and the Tech2 will be able to handle it and program it. So anyway, what we're going to do now is I'm going to put this new radio in. We're going to get the whole thing put back together. I'm not going to show all that because all you do is reverse what we already showed. And then we'll be sitting on a situation where this radio is going to say it's locked. And now we're going to show you how to unlock it. So we'll come back when we're at that point. All right, guys, we've got the radio installed. We've put all the trim pieces back on. Like I said, I wasn't going to show that because you guys could follow along just by reversing what we did. And when you turn the radio on, I was expecting to get a lock error, but instead I'm getting a calibration error. So you can get both types of problems. Sometimes it'll say locked. In this case, it's saying calibration error. because it didn't come up with what I expected, I'm going to show you both things that you can do on the Tech2 to get around that. And before I get started, let me tell you also that third-party device that was in there that is tied up to letting you have an auxiliary in for your iPhone. I mean, basically what that thing is, it plugs in the back there, and then if you cycle through the band with the radio on, what'll happen is it'll give you an aux in. So it's a pretty cool little device back from the early 2000s, but I decided just to leave it in there because it was spliced in. I'm hoping it doesn't cause a problem when we do this. It seems to be a pretty primitive device, and I don't think it'll have the same problem that something more sophisticated would. If you had like a third-party XM receiver, you definitely need to unhook that because that would cause a problem. All right, so let's fire up our Tech2. I'm going to turn the key to the, I'm not going to start the engine, but I'm going to turn it to the run position so that we get our dash lights and everything. And then I'm going to power up our Tech2. And hopefully we don't have any glare here. Let me kind of maybe turn it a little bit so it's got a better orientation for you. And we're going to go into diagnostics. This is a 2004. It's a passenger car. It's a Chevrolet. This is a J model. If you don't know how to pick this on your vehicle, I'll link another video at the top that shows you how to pick those codes. And of course it's Cavalier. And what I'm going to look at first is if I had the lock, what would I do for that? So I believe that's under the body. We don't have a digital radio receiver, but it thinks we do because we have that thing plugged in that does the aux in. All right, and then we would go down to radio, and we would go down to special functions, and we would go down to radio setup. And then we would have to pick what kind of radio we have. So remember I showed you guys how we picked the RPOs. That's one of the other reasons why we did this. So this is a US 8 radio. So we're going to pick that. It's United States. It's doing a test of the radio. It's making sure that it can talk to it. This is basically the body control module communicating with the radios module inside of it. Just let it chug along. We're not programming anything yet. We're just running a setup test. Okay, the test is successful. That's great. That means that that aux-in thing isn't causing us any problems, and the BCM can talk to the radio just fine. So now I'm going to exit out of this. So now the radio is set up. Now that doesn't necessarily clear the error, and it doesn't necessarily get rid of the problem, but it's something that we should do when we're coming in to do something like this. So now, how would I calibrate it? So I'm going to go all the way back to the top, and I'm going to go into the service programming system. And I got another video on this in general. I'll see if I can link that up here at the top too, because I'm not going to spend as much time on what this is. I'm basically going to go into this. I'm going to request information from the body control module to read in from it, and at the same time that'll pull up the information about the radio. So it's a Chevrolet. It's a 2004. It's a passenger car. It's a Cavalier. It's gasoline powered. We don't have the ignition on. Battery's in good shape. We're not programming anything yet, so we don't have to worry about putting any kind of auxiliary power on the battery. It's going to read our VIN. I'm going to gray that out, but I'm going to tell it it's yes. All right, so now we're going to do what it says, right? We're going to disconnect this. We've downloaded all this information, and it's in the Tech2. And now we're going to go over to our TechLine terminal, which is basically a PC running the TIS 2000 software, and we're going to see if we got a new calibration for this radio. So let's pick it up there. Okay, guys, we're in the Tech2's TIS 2000 screen, sitting on this old Windows PC that I use for that purpose, and we can see there's no newer calibration than the one that's currently installed here. This is too old of a vehicle to have separate calibrations for the radio. It's just basically one thing for everything, and that's what it uses to talk with. Let me just get rid of this little antivirus pop-up that sprung up here. So we're going to go to the next screen. It's going to basically tell us we've already got this. And so it's basically telling us, look, you know, you already have this calibration. you can't update it. But by going through the procedure we just went through and figuring out that it's the same, I believe it's going to be enough to get the radio happy with it. So we're going to try that. So at this point, we're going to go back in the vehicle and we're going to complete the process and see if it triggers the radio to figure out that I get it. I know what I'm supposed to be doing. So we're going to go back to the car now. Okay, we're going to go back into the SPS system. And we know that there's no newer calibration because we requested this information already and we went over to the PC and it told it that there's no new calibration you can apply. So we don't need to request this again. We just need to go into this step. If we did have a newer calibration, you guys can watch the video I linked earlier and you can see how that would be applied to the body control module, the engine control module, whichever ones needed to be updated. So we don't have it, so we're done at this point. So I'm going to exit out. And I think at this stage, if I power off my Tech2, and I think if I kill the radio here, and I think if I start the engine now, I should not have that calibration error, and I don't. All right, so that fixed that problem. And then I still have this third-party guy. I'm going to still make sure he still works. If I pick him, he still says aux in. All right, so everything looks like it's working now. So running that setup and going through the process of a calibration update and figuring out that there was not was enough to get that calibration error cleared. If this had said it was locked, we would have been able to then use the same process to unlock the radio by applying a new program, which GM calls a calibration. That would have cleared the lock message as well. So the same process I showed you for the CAL error would apply to the lock message. That's only for these RDS radios that are, and I'm showing you in a Cavalier, but it'd be the same in a Sunfire, it'd be the same in anything from probably 2000 to 2005. If the radio looks like this, the form factor, the shape, and the size, it's probably the same procedure. Some vehicles have an unlock feature built into the Tech2's menu. This one does not. So this is the process you would use with this type of radio. And this is just another way you can do this without opening up the radio and trying to lift off the EEPROM chip. You'll see some videos about how to butcher the circuit board and either pull a leg up or remove that chip altogether. This is the way you're supposed to do it, the way GM intended to do it. And if you have the equipment or you have access to the equipment, this video is to show you how. So I hope this helped you out on how to clear a calibration error, how to set up a new radio, how to pick the right one that's compatible and have a smooth upgrade and get the whole process done in a half hour or so. I think we've been out here just working on this for maybe 25, 30 minutes. If we didn't have the filming, we would have, spent even less. The hardest part is getting all this stuff off so you can get at this guy. So anyway, if you have questions, leave them in the comments. I'll try to help. Please like and subscribe. Otherwise, thanks for watching.